Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Duncan Masiwa. We'll be starting tonight's session around feedlots in Mzansi. Beef cattle fattening can be a profitable business to start, but understanding the ins and outs of what beef cattle pen fattening is and how exactly to start a feedlot is, of course, vital. And our focus tonight is exactly how to start. And we, of course, will highlight some of the questions from our listeners as well as they trickle in. Maybe as a start, Philip, I see you here. Clifford, I see you just requested and become a speaker. Dickett saying you're also there. Dickett saying maybe let's start with you. Quickly introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and where exactly in the world are you farming?
Hi, my name is Diketing Lusako. I'm from Senegal at a farm growth shoot farm. We're farming with beef cattle specifically. And I've got 12 years experience in livestock operations. And I've started also the business in setting up feedlots for startups. I'm also doing feedlot here on the farm. We're also feedlotting cattle here on the farm.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to chatting to you a bit later with regards to what it is that you do there on the farm and how exactly you manage your feedlot. Philip, let's jump over to you and tell us a bit about yourself. Yeah, let's get the conversation started.
I'm Philip Westhuizen, part of the Cerny Group. I think you guys know the Cerny Group close to Edenville and Kroonstad in Northern Free State area. So we've got a cattle feedlot as well. And my position is Head of Research and Innovation from an agricultural economic point of view. Been busy with research and innovation in the feedlot sector for quite a few years now. And we're also doing a lot of research on the red meat value chain and beef quality and so forth.
Thank you, Philip. A big fan of Cernik and the work that you guys are doing. And of course, a bigger fan of Nick Servantine. Clifford, you've joined us. Thank you so much. I think you're part of the furniture by now. We've had so many discussions with you around all things agriculture. Tell us a bit about yourself for those who may not be familiar with what it is that you do.
My name is Mtim Kulumzwake Clifford. I'm based in Senegal, Free State, farm name Astoria. I'm a mixed farming producer and just started my own feedlot at Astoria Farm. And then I would love to share my experience, my knowledge in the feedlots with anyone tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm definitely looking forward to this conversation. I think maybe to set the scene, perhaps we can start with explaining exactly how feedlots operate. Philip, if you don't mind, throw this one to you. Maybe share some insights on where the most feedlots are located, if that's a thing in the country.
I think there's a lot to cover, but in essence, if you look at a feedlot from a broader perspective, about 75 to 80% of all weaner calves are bought by feedlots in South Africa from cow calf producers, as we call them, or the primary producers. So the feedlots industry or sector plays a really significant and vital role in the entire red meat value chain. As I said, about 80% of calves go through the feedlot, so it's really important to understand what feedlots need and what the requirements are and so forth, and to understand what the importance of the feedlots. So I think in essence how a feedlot works is we purchase cattle or weaners between 200 and 240 kilograms from the primary producers, mainly on auctions. In the current years, there's quite a lot of direct purchases as well, direct from the farm by the feedlots. We keep them for a short backgrounding phase, or the most of the feedlots for a short backgrounding phase. Backgrounding is not as intensive as the feedlot itself, but smaller camps on pastures just for the rumen adjustment onto the higher energy maize diet that we feed the cattle, and also just to get them used to intensive feeding and the processes that we use. And that's approximately about a month, let's say between 3 and 4 weeks. And then they go into the feedlot for average of 130 days, which we will fatten them for slaughtering. Slaughtering is about 500 to 550 kilograms live weight, and then it goes on to the abattoir. Most of the feedlots or the bigger feedlots have their own abattoirs or dedicated abattoirs, which is quite a new thing in the past, let's say 10 to 20 years. Before 1991 or 1990, a lot of the abattoirs was government regulated. It's not government regulated anymore, so that's in private industry now as well. If you look at where the feedlots are, you can have a look at a map. Most of the feedlots are where the grain production is. So grain production is primarily, let's say, in the Free State province, in Gauteng, Northwest, where the grain production is, just for logistical purposes. There's a lot of cattle there as well. I think the idea is we will rather transport cattle than the feed that we have to transport. So most of the feedlots, the bigger feedlots, Current Beef, which is in Gauteng province, Sparta, which is in the Free State province, and then we've got Beef Master in the Northwest. And then there's quite a few others, capacity of around 30,000 between, let's say, the Northern Free State, a little bit in Gauteng, and as well as in the Northwest. And there's not a lot of feedlots or big commercial feedlots in provinces like the Eastern Cape or the Western Cape or even the Northern Cape due to the lack of grain production.
Thank you so much, Philip. Quite a lot to unpack there. I'm excited that you mentioned abattoirs because I understand that's quite an important element when it comes to feedlot in South Africa. You also mentioned 80% of our calves actually go through the feedlot sector, which is quite an important and significant number. I suppose the rest, the other 20%, is cattle that is found in informal markets, correct?
Informal markets, yes, but also it's also cattle that's older in age and that's slaughtered for festivities or cultural slaughterings or whatever that might be. So that's quite a diverse market for that.
Yeah, makes sense. Diketseng, I know you have over 12 years of experience in livestock production management. You're currently running a consulting and, of course, have experience setting up feedlots. Maybe take this question. Starting a feedlot in Mzansi, I understand, is quite profitable. What would you need to start as a new farmer? What do you need to know in terms of starting a feedlot? Let's talk maybe numbers.
I'm going to make just a rough estimation just to make it simpler for other people that might want to start in this. So first of all, you must be in an establishment that is not too close to where the people are dwelling, so most preferably on the farms. Let's say, for an example, you want to start with maybe 100 cattle. So you need to have a space that is able to house 100 cattle, depending on the kind of breed that you might prefer or that is adaptable to the area that you are at. And then you must have the equipment that you will use, starting with the housing, the handling facilities, such things such as scales, so that you can be able to track down the progress throughout, and then have access to where you will get your feed. If you're not producing your own feed at the farm, have access to where you will get feed. And also check your market, do a market assessment and see how closer are you to where your market will be, which is preferably the abattoirs. That's the most important thing that you need to consider. And have knowledge on the breeds that are adaptable to a specific place that you are at.
Let's maybe take it over to Clifford. Clifford, maybe there's something that you can add to what Diketseng just said with regards to starting up and what are the costs associated to that.
There are 10 basic feedlot facts. The money that you make is the money that you save. Economic of the scale is needed to complete economically. Extremely high risk. No catch, no nets, no forward pricing, lower per head returns and high volumes. Highly technical in management, nutrition and health will assist. Extremely capital intensive, market specific final product and quality. Be aware of the difficulty of you getting in the game in the markets. Reasonable guesses and make from limited information. The wrong cow not fed right will also align to a problem. And then if I can go to the economy, the beef to grain ratio, purchasing margin, feeding margin, calf to beef percentage, feedlot break even. So you need to be more aligned and more number wise, because the purchasing margin, when it's positive, when the price of the calf per kg is less than the kg of the beef product sold. The negativity is when the price of the calf per kg carcass is more than the kg of the beef sold. Like recently, you were aware that we got foot and mouth, and then we couldn't sell our produce at the feedlots. Now we had to take them out to cut the cost, take them back to the camps. So the margins, when the cost of the produce a kg of a carcass is less than the price of a kg carcass sold. The negative of it is when the cost of the produce per kg of the carcass is more than the kg of the carcass sold.
I appreciate that breakdown. I think what I heard from Clifford now and something that Philip also said, and Diketseng you as well, it seems like location is quite important. I think Philip was talking about most feedlots being found in the Free State, in Gauteng, and of course in the Northwest as well. How important is location? Farmers need to be quite strategic when it comes to that. Philip, maybe you want to take this?
I think location is quite important. I think there's more important factors than the location, but you have to have a look at it from two perspectives. Number one is where you get your feed from. Remember, it's an intensive feeding system, so everything that your cattle is going to eat, you need to deliver to them in their feed troughs. So there's no natural grazing and so forth. So you need to transport your maize and all your protein supplies and so forth. So that's the one thing. I think going further than 300 kilometers from your origin or your feedlot, that can be quite difficult. The other viewpoint is the cattle itself, purchasing the cattle. Once again, I think a 250 kilometer radius around your feedlot is most probably the parameter. Big thing with transport is transport cost is really expensive, whether it's transporting feed stuff or transporting weaners or fattened calves. I think the parameter is about 250 maybe to 300 kilometers in my perspective. So, and the other thing is, if you purchase calves outside of a radius of, let's say, 200 to 300 kilometers, it might be into another nature area or other province, which will make it quite difficult for those animals to adopt feedlot with regards to different natural pastures that they had and the climate and so forth. Location-wise, that's a big thing. And then location of the abattoir is just a transport calculation. I mean, there's no other things around that.
I think a highlight there is location is very important. If you're looking at anything outside of 300 kilometers from where your feedlot is. I see we have a speaker at Bonoko Matlatse. Your question or comment?
Hello. My question, I jumped straight into the network of Feedlot about a year ago. Got burned on my fingers. It was not easy, but I learned a lot. When it comes to feed cost, I bought everything. I recently just started producing. So as a first timer, how would you advise for someone to go about when starting into a feedlot and going into purchasing his feed and the kgs at the marginalized price, because of going straight to the NTKs and the cooperacies? The prices are fast. They're very hectic. How can we marginalize feed?
Thank you for the question, Bonoko. Clifford, I see you're unmuted. If you want to take that one, you can definitely. And if our other speakers want to add on to that, you're most welcome.
I think it's most advisable for anyone who's willing to start a feedlot to own a farm and to produce own feed and then just buy the mixes. Okay, I'll give him the beef to grain ratio of how many kgs of grain can be purchased per kg of the beef. So if the beef price is at 45 rand a kg, the grain ratio must be at 1,620, of which it will be equals to 162 per kg. The ratio of 45 kg at 162 will take you to 28:1. The principle is that it is uneconomically to feed the ratio below 13:1.
Thank you so much, Clifford.
I think as a startup, Masati, you must first of all try to understand exactly what's going on. What are the prices looking like when you start to purchase, if you're purchasing, if you're not producing yourself. And then from there, you need to have an understanding of how to estimate what the market trends will be looking like by the time you sell, which is in 4 months' time from when you initially started feeding. So basically, what you need to work on is like 10 kilograms per animal per day. For an example, if you're having 100 animals, you can work them out on 10 kilograms of feed per animal per day. That is your feed from the beginning to the end. If you break it down with your 100 animals, each and every animal, the average of what they must have eaten, it's 9.75 to 10 kilograms per animal per day. And then you calculate that. If this is how much I'm feeding per day, and this is the overall amount of feed that I've bought from the first time to the last time, from the beginning to the end, if they have eaten 10 rands per animal, how much have they eaten? Then you know your cost per feed. And then you also say, if I buy, for an example right now, the minimum or maybe maximum calves now, it's 6,400 rands per animal, that is 200 kilograms. That's just a rough example depending on the weight. But if you take it to 200 rands, I'm assuming that is what you get. And then when you sell your animals, maybe for an example, when they get to 450 kilograms, and then you've taken out the dressing percentages, because the abattoirs only pay us based on the carcass, which is the cold weight. After the animals have been slaughtered, and all the blood, the heads, and the offal has been taken out. And then we say now the price is looking like something like 60 rands per kilogram. So when you purchased it, it was 6,400 rands. But now when you sell it, based on the calculation that I've just said, it's going to give you 15,660. So that is not your profit. You need to also take out all the costs, like the feeding costs. So for an example, when you buy 100 animals, you're going to need 640,000 to purchase. And when you sell at 15,660, the amount that you're going to get is 1,566,000. So you do all those calculations and then take out the 10 kilograms per animal per day. That's what you need to calculate on. And also look at the salaries of your people. Say maybe you have 2 people that are working for you. you calculate their salary per month, multiply that by 4 per person. So if they're getting 2,000, it's 2,468. It's going to be 8,000 over 4 months. And then the other person, it's going to be 16,000. And that's just a rough example. And then you take out all these little costs, including your fuels and all of that. So all these calculations must be done before you set up your feedlot. Because if you're looking just at the numbers, say, okay, this is where I start with, this is what I end with, you might be missing something that is happening here in between. And that's where we mostly fail.
I love that.
I love the elaboration of it. Thank you very much, DK. Thank you, guys.
If you need information, I'm sure you'll be able to connect with Diketseng. Like I said, she has over 12 years of experience, so she knows, and you can hear that she knows what she's talking about. Let's talk costs again. What do farmers need to know? Philip?
Are you referring to cost to actually build a feedlot and to start it from scratch?
That's correct, yes.
That's quite a difficult question to answer. What I do have is I've got a quotation of architects that do this professionally. I'll give you the cost that they estimated. I think it's really important. I think everybody will agree with me. If it's on a small scale, anything less than, let's say, 1,000 cattle, I really think you should really have some alternative plans. I don't think you should build a high standard and high tech feedlots with all the weigh bridges and so forth. Your initial capital is just going to too high to actually get a good return on investment. According to me, a minimum of 2,000 cattle will justify, let's say, a proper commercial buildings and feed facilities and so forth. So with that said, I've got a quotation here of 22 million for a 2,000 head feedlot. That's quite a lot of money, 22 million for 2,000 head. But remember, it includes the mixing plants, the weigh bridges and so forth. So expanding from 2,000, doubling it up to 4,000, even let's say 10,000, you're not going to double up your 22 million to get to that. It's going to be way less expensive to actually increase the capacity of the feedlot. So that's why I said it's quite a difficult one to answer. But if it's on small scale, let's say 50 or 100 or 200 cattle, it's really not necessary to build all the fancy stuff. If somebody's really interested, there's guys that specializes in this. It's quite a difficult question to really pinpoint.
Thank you so much, Philip, for giving us a breakdown of that. Mthimkhulu, I want to quickly jump to you. Purchasing cattle for fattening need a lot of skill. What is your advice to evaluate the potential for fattening of different types of cattle? What can you share with us?
I'm going to speak about the negative and the positive. You should produce beef cheaper than to purchase. Purchase lighter cows, increase feeding period, try to reduce the purchase price. Reference for late maturing types, processes in production driven. The actions will be, there can be worse situation for feedlots, drop in demand of calves and price of calves, feedlot number drops, very selective purchases, input costs are cut, change by products. Some will exist in the industry, like the informal markets. I think for me it's more viable because that's whereby a willing buyer, willing seller. And then on that method, then you can also align to your feeding cost and your period and your everything so that you can be profitable. Like I mentioned earlier, also being one in the production for your own maize so that you only buy additional stuffs to feed. It's also a cost saving. And to win in this, like I'm planning to next year also set up my own abattoir. It's just to cut the whole circle so that you don't end up being a price taker from someone else.
Thank you so much for that, Mthimkhulu. Diketseng, I want to jump to you. Let's maybe look at weaner production. Farmers using weaner production systems, their main goal is to breed calves and rear them and sell them, of course. What is the best practice here when it comes to weaner production? What tips do you have for our farmers?
When it comes to weaner production system, basically what we do is a farmer is breeding their animals on the farm, and then they're rearing their animals maybe from when they're born to when they are between 6 to 8 months, and to make sure that they are in good condition. That one is not that much feed intensive. You can introduce creep feeding if you can. If you've got good pastures, if you've got good management practices, you're rotating your animals and you're making sure that all the records are kept on time. You can easily win 180 kilograms animals, which are preferable when you buy them to take them for backgrounding into the feedlot. That is the market that is very important to connect also from producers to the feedlots and to the abattoir. For those people that don't want to be in the stress of excessive feeding, the minimum standardized feeding of your breeding animals, which will ensure that you rear bigger animals. And also that also depends on the breed of animal and the adaptability. So you need to have proper study of where you are at, where you want to start your establishment, what the animals you need to use. Those are the aspects that you focus mainly on. And then once you've got your animals weighed correctly and you've got the minimum requirement weight, which is 180 kilograms, then you look for market, which is not that hard to find because commercialized feedlots are looking for animals and they actually send out buyers to scout for farmers that are producing good quality animals that they can take into the feedlot and that will perform well in the feedlot. So the most important thing is to take care of your breeding animals, which are your bulls and your cows. That will give you your calves, and you take care of your cows in the correct way, and you keep all the records of your animals. And then you can track down from when this animal was born to until it was maybe 6 to 8 months, and then you weigh them, and then you sell them to the nearest feedlot. I think feedlot does provide us with those agents or the buyers to come and scout the animals. And if you got good communications with them, you can just send them pictures of your animals and say, no, I've got this many animals. I need you to come collect them. So that one, it's for those people that are not willing to go into the stress of feeding their animals for prolonged periods and then struggling to get their abattoirs and stuff like that. They can be the ones that are selling to the feedlots.
Thank you so much, Diketseng. I suppose it comes back to what you said in the intro. It's all about research, making sure that you understand number one, what it is that you're getting yourself into, where you're located, and then also, be aware of the organizations that are out there to help you when starting a feedlot. Of course, for those of you who just tuned in, we're discussing all things feedlots. That is, of course, what livestock farmers need to know when starting a feedlot. We've got a request here from @Legendary Slits. Do you have a question or a comment for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to find out when it comes to space, when you're trying to literally set up a feedlot, how much space do you actually need? There's been so many, speaking to a lot of agricultural people actually work for agriculture, not actually farming. They work for agriculture. Let's put it, there's a difference. How much space do you actually need to say, okay, cool, tomorrow I feel like I want to start a feedlot. I don't want to now be getting my cows out and traveling 200 kilometers to go get grazed. When I want to start to say, guys, I want to start a feedlot, I'm a small scale. I'm not going to start with 1,000 cows. I'm going to start most probably with 20, 30, and then build it up for that. How much space do I need?
Wait, I think Philip, you briefly touched on this in the intro. Maybe just you want to recap that for us. Philip.
Space-wise, it's about 12 square meters per animal. So that's your normal weaners. It's about 12 square meters per animal. That should be yours. And if you look at your feeding troughs, it's about 30 centimeters of feeding space per animal. And if you look at your water supply, between 45 and 50 liters per calf per day, if you look at your water supply and reservoirs and so forth.
Diketseng, I see you unmuted your mic there. Did you want to add something?
I think Philip has pretty much answered it correctly. So since he's saying he's a small scale and he wants to start small, when I was working out my calculations, because I'm mostly focusing on startup, if we can focus on 100 animals and then you work it downwards. But also, you need to check on the labor that you have. Are you going to pay people more or are you going to do everything yourself? If it's like that and you want to start with 100, the spacing that Philip has given are quite accurate. So it will depend on how many animals you want to put in your feedlot. So what I would ask you to focus on is the feeding space, and you can calculate from that. And then if you give your animals a feeding space of 30 to 45 centimeters, depending on the breed of animals that you're feeding. If you can give them 30 to 45 per animal, that is feeding space. And feeding space, I mean, where they'll be able to eat all at the same time without stamping onto each other. That is one thing. So you can calculate your, say, maybe for an example, you have an already established space, and then you want to know how many animals you can put in there. You can go with your ruler and 15 centimeters and say, I'm giving them 45 centimeters per animal. Then you will determine based on the feeding space. But like Philip said, 12 to 15 square meters per animal, that's what you need. And you can do all those calculations. So for startup, for small farmers who are not like commercialized or who are just willing or starting to get into the feedlot thing, it's easier to work out the calculations and then you move them up as you grow.
If you really need something to elevate as quick as possible, the smaller the space, the smaller the number in one crawl will work for you, because you'll be having any almine close to water, close to food. That's what you need. The longer the distance, traveling to the water to the feed. That's where you lose your cages.
Thank you so much for that. I hope that answered your question.
I just want to find out, is it specified to which type of breed you growing?
To align to his question, you can't take Friesland and take it to a feedlot. You can't take your Jersey to a feedlot. You need to be on Bonsmara, you need to be on Beefmaster, you need to be on Brahmane, you need to be, let's say, on Kirolai, that. You can't take a milk cow and put it in a feedlot and think then at the end of the day you'll make money, because it's going to be intensive feeding to get it to align to the cages.
The Drakensberg?
Still good, hence I said, etc., etc.
Yeah, I've got the Drakensberg, I've got the Ankole in my yard.
I don't have pretty much information with Ankole because it's the breed of breds and towards Limpopo. I'm in the Free State, and here we on Drakensberg, we on Bonsmara, we on Beefmasters, we Kerolais, we Brahmane, and we crossbreed and the Boranes. So I don't have much information to Ankole.
Philip, you want to help? I'm the farmer there.
Yeah, so with regards to breed, without a doubt, there's genetic differences. There's a lot of research on that. I can send whoever needs it some research results on that as well. So there are quite significant differences. As the previous speaker also said, dairy breed, there's no way you're going to get the performance you need for profitability out of them. The same principle is for, let's say, the Bos Indicus breeds, which is the Boeron and the Brahman and Sangha breeds like the Nguni and the Afrikaner. You get better growth and performance from the Bos Taurus cattle breeds, which is the, let's say, Bosmara, Angus, Simmentaler, Charolais, Hereford, those kind of breeds. There's better performance without a doubt. But remember, you can make profit out of cattle that doesn't perform as well if the purchase price is lower. So don't throw away some of the less performing breeds in the feedlot. They've got other positives, but if you can get it at a decent price or a discounted purchase price for your feedlot, you can still make money. So that's quite a scientific thing to have a look at, and I would encourage everybody to really do some research on the breeds and what breeds do perform in a feedlot and adjust your purchase prices accordingly. Because I truly believe that we can make money out of any breed in the feedlot, but to optimize it and for guys that starts the feedlot, as the previous speaker also said, start up with, let's say, the later maturing breeds, which is, let's say, Bosmara. And
thank you so much. I hope that answers your question over there. And if you do need more information, you're of course more than welcome to contact our panelists tonight, Philip. Philip, I believe the voices in my ear just told me that you recently got your PhD.
According to the papers, yes, but please don't do that.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. We do have another speaker request I'm struggling to accept. If you maybe want to pose your question, Lefuno, what's your question or comment?
Yes, I just want to ask panel on behalf of the new, emerging farmers. How can you assist those who have an appetite in feedlot? They do have cackles, they do have numbers, they do have nice breed, but they want to venture into feedlot. Is there any institution that can assist them or that can assist them with capital to have that kind of feedlot that they want in their farms? Thank you.
On my friend's behalf, the Cernic group in the Kronstadt to Edenville area have got a pilot project they're going whereby they educate farmers. After educating, start implementing and start sending mentors to their farms and also assist in acquiring the funding to start the feedlots. And I would really like to applaud Omnique for that, Omnique Serfontein and Philip Yelespangele Dunchut. You guys are doing good, thanks.
It's a pleasure. There's quite a lot going on with regards to informal or emerging farmers or whatever we want to call it, to get all those small-scale farmers to a commercial level from Cernic point of view. And I must say it's really optimistic that, not easy, but it is optimistic that there's quite a lot of other institutions like Absa Bank really assisting, well, financially, but also with regards to support in various ways. So if anyone needs to or wants a little bit more information or to apply to be part of the program, just go to the SARDEF website. There's an application form and the guys will contact you and they will hopefully help you to get into one of those programs for mentoring or for training or to help you with finance, as the speaker said. So that's SARDEF, SERDEV.co.za. And then hopefully you guys can get into those programs, which is brilliant. I think it's really optimistic.
Definitely do make use of that opportunity. The Sevne Group is doing amazing work when it comes to the livestock industry and to the development of farmers, of course. Mukhosi, I'm so glad that you tuned in tonight. I believe this is an important topic for you. In fact, you suggested this topic. What's your question or comment?
Good evening, Duncan and colleagues. My question is, who determines the purchase price of the winners? Is it the feedlotter or the seller? Because we get different prices even if you go to the auction. For instance, for Nguni, a winner, and Bonsmara, the prices are not the same. So I just want to find out who determines the price.
That's, of course, a very important one. Diketeng, do you maybe want to take this one? And then Clifford, you can add on to that.
Yes, I'm going to take it and then I'm going to pass it on to the others on the panel. I believe that the market trends are determined by the beef market, if you're into beef. So it's not a specific person that will say, no, I want to take the animals for this much. But when the minimum trend, it's say, for an example, if it's 32 right now, and then you get people that are giving you 32, and then somebody says, no, I want to give you 33 because now I want those animals because they look good. And then somebody else, they would pile up until you get to a desirable price that you say, okay, fine. Now I had, if you've got more buyers that are willing to sell, but there's a standard, there's a minimum for where you start up from. Actually, I think it's a maximum, and then anybody else will top onto that to give you a price that looking at your animal say, no, I can compete with that person, I can compete with that, I can compete with that. So it depends on a trend that is set by the market, which is a standard. And then individual buyers, depending on who you sell to, will then compete to get your animals. And then once you're comfortable with the price, you can give them to whoever for whatever the price that you will be getting from them. That is above or compared to the market trend. I believe that is how it works.
I'll advise my brother to call the Daily Verse application. And there's also now this good guy doing good there, the AMT. I think anyone who wants that, I'll share with also. Because weekly he gives you everything that is going on the market, either commodities, oil, everything, to ship, to everything. Monthly is updating a video. I think what is this? Geboorg, Bedeer Standard Bank.
I love it, Clifford. Thank you so much. Clifford there, and of course, Diketeng. One of our listeners earlier was saying that they were struggling to hear Diketeng. I hope that you were able to hear her now. Mohosi, you have another question.
Yes, just a follow-up question. If, let's say, you come to my farm to purchase my winners, are you going to buy them based on the weight at that particular time, or who's going to determine the price between me and you? Are we going to check the price that the market is giving, or you'll offer me a purchase price?
What I'm going to say is, if I'm an individual buyer, I'm going to depend on the market price that is set for that particular week. Like Mtimkuli is saying, there's a weekly release of prices that goes with the market trends of all beef cattle. So nobody will just decide to say, no, I'm going to buy, or maybe say, I want to sell for 40 rands per kilogram this week. If it's not in the trend, it's impossible. It's not going to be easy for you to get that. But if somebody comes and gives you that price, that's a bonus for you. So if I get to your farm and I'm one individual farmer, and the market trend says this week is 32 rands. That's for an example. And then I get to your farm and then we weigh your animals and I say, okay, fine. Because overall weight is this much, I'm going to give you 34 per kilogram. And then we multiply that by the kilograms of all your animals. And then it gives me a certain amount based on the trend. But then if I leave and then Tim Kulu comes and says, okay, so she offered you 32. I think your animals are too good for that. Let me top that up with 2 rands, and then I'm going to take them for 34. That's just an example. So you see, you're elevating your price. It's going up until to a certain price where somebody says, no, I'm not able to top that up because now I'm not going to make profit when I sell. It depends on the market trend that is set every week, trends that goes on all the time. And then there's new prices every week that are released. I don't know if it's province per area or if it's for, I'm not quite sure, but you follow up on your Farmers Weekly. If you follow up with your auctions, your abattoir, your fellow farmers, then you will have an understanding. Just ask, what's the price this week? What's the price this week? Then you'll know. Then you start from that and then you take it further. If somebody is interested in your animals, they will top up on that price that is set.
Philip, I see you unmuted your mic there. Did you quickly want to add something to that?
For clarification, I think it's really, really important that everybody understand this. The previous speakers spoke about the price trend. Just to give you guys some clarification, the price trend is not set by anybody. It's not an organization or person or the feedlot industry or whatsoever. Previous week's prices, whatever happened realistically on auctions, the average of that price from last week, that will be the trend for this week. And this week, whatever cattle were sold for in this week, that will be the trend for next week. So that's the starting point of the winner price or carcass price for the next week. So it's just the average of the previous week. There's nothing fancy about it. It's really just averages. And the averages is influenced by supply and demand. Guys that's willing to pay more or less for quality or whether they need it or whatever it might be. So it's really an open market system based on averages for the country.
Thank you so much, Phil. Appreciate that. Now, we've been talking about everything that farmers need to know when it comes to starting a feedlot, but I know that, agriculture it's a challenging industry. Bonoko earlier talked about how we jumped straight into it and had some difficulties in that. What are some of the main challenges, when it comes to running a feedlot? I know that some experts mention health and diet of the cattle and animal waste management as well. Is that a main concern in your experience? Philip, do you maybe want to take that and then we'll go over to Clifford?
There's a lot of challenges. Without a doubt, it's a highly intensive and specific, much needed skills industry, if you can call it that. So with regards to nutrition, animal health is absolutely vital for profitability and sustainability. However, I do believe that generally in South Africa, with regards to nutritional companies, there's a lot of them, as well as our health companies, which is the Ritas and Pfizer and all these guys. I really believe that they are above standard and all of them are really, really good. So I would advise anybody to get in contact with your local representative from a nutrition and a health point of view. And you shouldn't pay school fees on nutrition or health. There's a lot of knowledge out there and you just need to tap into it. So don't try to figure that out. Don't try to be the specialist in nutrition or health. Get the necessary guys and they are not that expensive. If you just purchase their products, they will give you all the advice and mentorship for free. So I would really encourage guys to do that. The main challenges is the management part of it, keeping everything together, optimizing production. I think that's the main challenge. And the bigger challenge is the financial part. And the financial part is we are price takers because it's an open market system. So that will be your main challenge. You can only control that up to a certain point. But I think cash flow. If you can manage your cash flow, I think you've won quite a large part of the battle.
Awesome. Thank you so much for Clifford and Tinkulu. Anything to add to that?
I'll add the total input cost per kg total the income per kg. In a feedlot, just to break even, the purchase price, feed cost, overheads and marketing should be equals to cash income, official income, hired income and any other income. So advisably so, you can own your own herd of 100, let's say start off in Swaras or whatever breed, aligning to the feedlot. And then now you start sectioning your bull rotation and breeding and when to put the bull and when to take it out. And then you add to your feedlot your own cows. And then later you own your own abattoir, like Nick is doing there. You now manage to cut the whole circle. And cutting the whole circle, there's no middleman. That's whereby you make money. Because now you're going to feed, you don't have a market. And then somebody now is going to offer you a price, not relative to what you spend it to grow the cow. So it's always advisable to have most of your livestock into your feedlot, later to your abattoir, then later delivered to the shelves. I think that's the best way. This thing works 100%.
Thank you so much, Clifford, for breaking that down for us. I see that you got a lot of acknowledgement with regards to that. I see we have Jaftandu here. You requested to speak. Jaftandu is no stranger to this platform. How are you? What's your question or comment?
No, I just wanted to ask, is there anyone who knows how far is the process of IMF virus that we usually get from, we call it Philippieste, Magnanet Catarrhal fever? Anyone got any idea how far is the process? Because last I remember that they got the vaccine, but that vaccine was supposed to be approved by OBP before it can be on a market.
Anyone with insights to that? Definitely a point, an important point that you just raised there, and I think it's definitely something that our publication will look into. Philip, I'm not sure from your side, Diketseng, Tinkulu, is there anything that you could perhaps share with Jaftandu?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of knowledge on that. Didn't really understand the question, but I'm sure we can find out and direct the question into the appropriate channels after this discussion.
I think from my side, what I'll let you know is every time if you're a feedlot owner, try after purchasing. Don't just take straight to your feedlot. Isolate certain period, then you take the guy to the feedlot after you injected or assessed the animal. Because you can't somehow go to location, get something, then you put straight to your feedlot. That will take you out now. I don't have much information to the sickness, but the best thing is to isolate first before mixing.
Thank you so much. Jaftando, definitely something that we'll look into as a publication. Thank you so much for posing that question. Much appreciated. We are coming to a close, but maybe just, final tips or comments. Philip, we've heard a lot tonight in terms of what it takes to start a feedlot for both new farmers and farmers that are perhaps already commercializing in South Africa. What are your final comments for those that are looking to starting a feedlot?
Just on a previous question, I'll just do a comment on that as well. It's just the word is biosecurity, and we can't emphasize that enough. So biosecurity is crucial. And you guys can also go onto the Feedlot Association, SAFA, South Africa Feedlot Association website. There's a protocol called the QSure, and all the biosecurity rules and so forth is there as well. So I think that will be really helpful. Otherwise, if you want to start a feedlot, I think it's a complex industry without a doubt, but it's quite a rewarding industry as well and really interesting. Never a dull moment. Get into it without a doubt. I know the previous speaker said you need to get into the entire value chain. I do agree with that, but baby steps. Take it step by step. Rather, make sure you are in control of one of the segments within the value chain and use the rest of the value chain. And when you're ready, capital-wise, financial-wise, and expert-wise, then you transform into the next segment of the value chain as well. And hopefully you can get into the entire value chain, owning your own value chain in your area. That will be great. Thank you very much.
Baby steps, definitely baby steps. I'm going to flip the script quickly. We've got one more request. Diketing, I'm going to ask you to end off the session as we get to it. But I see you asked to speak. Maybe just quickly pose your question or comment.
Yeah, my name is Maura Robert. As you can see, I'm based in the EU, but I'm coming to South Africa in the second quarter of 2023 for investing in livestock apart from other areas like grains. And since we are talking about the livestock, let me just say for 1 minute, what is it in the livestock, particularly in the feedlots. A previous speaker said that the best way to maximize your profit is to make sure that you are in charge, you control the whole value chain. And what I want to come and do is that, if possible, you have what we call vertically integrated project. That means, because that's what I want to do, you have your own feed, you make your own feed, you have your own breeding, you have your own feedlot, then you have your own abattoir, so you just sell the final product. And since that might not be easy for somebody, an individual, somebody who has not the financial muscle to do that, I think the best way to maximize your profit, if you are a small farmer or this and this, you can form something like a cooperative whereby you join hands together and you have your own feed, you have your own breeding, you have your own feedlot and your own abattoir. So that way, you'll be able to maximize your profits and gain from what you are doing. Now, let's say the animal is ready at the feedlot and there is no market, then brokers, and this is a problem with a lot of farmers, particularly in Africa, you sell at a throwaway price. You might not recoup the investment that you have made on that animal. So if you cannot do a vertically integrated project from the feed, breeding, feedlot, abattoir, and then you sell the product finally, you can form cooperative and you join hands and you can do such a project for minimum of, let's say, 10, 20 or something like that. That's all what I want to say. It's very important to have cooperative if you can join hands, trusting people, honest people, and you maximize your profit. But this one of doing just one part, and particularly, in a feedlot, from what I've run, if the animal has reached the stage where you should sell it and it continues feeding, now you are going at a loss because that animal should have already left the feedlot. You should have sold it. It's not increasing the weight anymore, so you are going at a loss. So you better sell it, even if you sell it at a loss. So let's think about that. Even if you might not be able financially form a cooperative and do that. And maybe for those who can do that, you do that, because that's what I want to come and do. Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting this space. I always follow you people, and be blessed, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I quite like that. I think what we've established tonight is that it's quite capital intensive starting a feedlot. There are definitely ways around it, as Moara said. And perhaps one of those ways is to look at getting into feedlot as a cooperative, taking hands with other people, definitely taking it from there. Diketing, final comments, tips, anything that you want to leave our listeners tonight with?
What I would like to say is, especially for those people that are interested in starting their feedlots and their small scale, what I would like to say to you is that you start where you're at, meet with your local farmers, ask for information, meet with your extension officers, look for short courses, understand where you are at, the location where you are at, understand the market that is close by, understand the kind of breeds that are adapt to where you are at, and try to gather all the information, and then you tap into this. If you need mentorship, you can ask your local farmers, especially the commercialized farmers like Mtim Kulu, he's one of the commercial farmers here, that you can ask to have under your wing so that you know exactly what you're doing. And if you're able to get animals cheaper, like at non-formal markets, you do that as long as you understand the breed that you are purchasing. If you want to start with your own, if maybe, for an example, you are left an inheritance of 100 cattle and then you want to start with that, you can do that. Follow the right procedures, keep all records, and make sure that you understand the market and where you're also going to get all your supplies. That's all I would like to say. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I think an important thing here is to know that you're not alone, in starting out. There are seasoned farmers that have walked the road that you're about to embark on. So definitely tap into those resources, mentors, like Diketseng said. Clifford, anything from you? Last comments, tips, advice for our listeners tuning in tonight?
Everything that is happening on this planet had to start somewhere. Let's all people leave this mentality of we always have to start big. I'll make an example. If you want to own a block of flats, you start on your backyard doing 4 rooms and then later growing. Start depositing so that the bank shows it's positive, that this renting thing is working for you. And then you later can explore, invest in more property, grow, align, make money. We all have to start somewhere. Let's stop this mentality of making business plans worth 50 million, because you make a plan of 50 million, who will give you 50 million and then you're not bringing anything to the table. That's my take on everything that is said today. And thanks to all the listeners and the questions, me being part of the session as well, sharing my knowledge.
Thank you so much, Clifford. Make sure that you do your research. Do not be afraid to start small, like Clifford said there. That brings us to the end of this session on feedlots and all things that farmers should know when starting their feedlot business. Thank you so much to our panelists that joined us tonight, Clifford, Philip, Diketseng. Thank you so much for taking out time. Share with us, some of your experience and industry knowledge when it comes to this topic.